How's it going, guys? This is Corey from Keen Ramps. If you're watching this video, it's because you bought our slapstick obstacle. And this obstacle, all you need to assemble is a drill. It can be a plug-in or cordless, and a Phillips head bit. And it should take you maybe 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how fast you are. If you ordered a slapstick, we have two versions. We have a 4-foot long and an 8-foot long. An 8-foot long is essentially two 4-foot longs. This is the box that it's gonna come in. It weighs 42 pounds. Make sure you lift with your legs, don't jerk your back, handle it with care. Once you open up that box, you're gonna have these contents inside. There's gonna be four 46.5-inch 2x4s. There's gonna be this 2-inch pipe with a half 2x4 bolted to it. You're gonna have the Baltic birch or skate light sides, depending on what you got. And you're gonna have the 3/4-inch ply sides, AKA the transition sides. And then you're gonna have some of these 2.5-inch long screws to put in the 2x4s on the sides. And then you're gonna have these 1 and 5/8-inch screws to attach the surfacing. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do is preload your screws into the transition sides. The reason that I like to do this is just so every time you attach, you're not having to grab the screws. So it's kind of nice to just preload them all at once. You can either use a hammer and tap them in, or you can use your fingers, or you can use the drill and just do a couple turns to get them started. And this isn't something you have to do, it's just a personal preference. After building thousands of ramps, it ends up being the most efficient. All right, so once you have all your screws preloaded, I like to start with the coping piece first. Use that little notch right there. Same thing over here. You got that frame. And then I'm just gonna lay these out where they're gonna end up going. So you'll notice that these screws are so that the 2x4 can sit vertically, and then these ones are so the 2x4 can sit on edge horizontally here. This bottom one, you pretty much go until it barely hits the floor, where this is flush here. That corner's hitting the floor, and then maybe kick it back just a little, maybe a 1/4 inch or so, just so these are going in there, and you have a little bit of wiggle room and gap underneath. So I'm gonna start with the coping. I like to do all one side first, and then I'll do the whole other side. I'm gonna throw this one here, eyeball center. I want this screw perfectly centered on this 2x4. Make sure that's super, super flush. If it's not, say you sunk your screw and it's popping up a little, grab a hammer or back of your drill and you can kind of tap it down a little. And then do your best not to over torque the screws, because actually you're gonna get the best grab with a screw when that head isn't sucking down too far, because when you sink it too far and it sucks down, you're gonna get more wiggle and play over time. If you have that head just sticking right out on top, it's gonna grab the best. So now I got this whole side on, so I'm gonna do the opposing side. And something I like to do here is I'll usually use my thumb to hold it perfectly flush, get it where I like it, then attach. So this one needs to get tapped in a little, get it where I like it, right there. All right, so now we got our whole frame. This is nice and solid and intact. Okay, so something to keep in mind when you're putting this together, do it on as level of the ground as possible. So if you assemble this thing on a slope or any kind of humps, you could potentially be assembling this and it's gonna conform to that. So one thing you can do is pull out maybe a scrap piece of wood, or put it on your hardwood floor or your kitchen, somewhere that you know that is super, super level, and kind of cross-reference it. But before you put the sheeting on, stomp it down to ensure that it's not twisted or racked in any way. So I feel good about that. I'm gonna use the normal ground because it's not very different. So now that you have a completed frame, put the surfacing on. Whether it's birch or skate-light, it's gonna be the same exact size, and it's gonna have these countersunk holes, and it's gonna have one logo here on one of the pieces. Just make sure that that logo is reading right side up, closer to the coping. Notice the holes are aligning with the center of these 2x4s. So don't put it this way, not gonna do anything. So for this, you wanna get it all the way flush with the coping right there. Make sure it's flush on both sides, and throw screws in. Just kind of pay attention to these sides, so you'll see that this is flush here, but that little piece of ply is overhanging a little, so we want to get it perfect. So I'm going to smack it a little, adjust the sheets if you have to. So if you have to adjust them a little to get your side ply more flush, you could do that. Another thing that you can do, and this is kind of just a random builder tip, sort of a cool use of a hammer. So say I have an overhang here, right? But I'm kind of flush there. So I actually want this piece of ply to slide that way. I'm gonna go ahead and undo that screw a little bit, right there. And then I'm gonna pry this. And as I pry it, now we're flush. So once I get it where it's flush and I like it, I'm gonna throw this screw in, left-handed. So now we're perfectly flush all the way through. Throw that back in, and I'm gonna put the rest of these in. All right, so once you put all the screws in, go ahead and just lift it up and make sure that you sunk these screws far enough to make this piece of ply conform to the transition. Sometimes if you don't sink these far enough, you can have like a tiny little gap here, which you don't want. So that side looks good. This side looks good. And that's it, that's a completed obstacle. This is the 4-foot slapstick. Again, we do make an 8-foot version. If you ordered an 8-foot version of this obstacle, assemble both of these pieces up till this point, and that's when you're gonna want to attach your second one. So I have some pre-built ones over here. I'm just gonna grab one of these just for instructional purposes. So these sides were cut on this machine, so they're perfect to the tens of thousands of tiny fractions of numbers. So when they're next to each other, they're gonna line up absolutely perfect. So your biggest concern here in attaching these together is gonna be this coping seam. Obviously, I'm not gonna attach it like this because my trucks are gonna catch that. I wanna get this to a point where it's perfectly flush, and then I'm gonna attach. So you can either do it on the ground like this, or you could stand it. If you stand it, just be aware that this is thin. There's kind of a tipping point hazard. Maybe have somebody spotting you. But when you go this way, it's kind of nice because you can make sure it's perfectly flush. These are exactly where they should be. And then I'm gonna cross-reference my coping here. So I wanna wiggle it a little bit to get it just right. And so you'll notice that the coping is actually beveled a little bit. So these edges were filed down so that when they meet up, you're not gonna potentially have two 90-degree angles that could catch your truck. So with that bevel, there's essentially a smoothed out valley for your truck to grind over. So this is just right where we want it. So once you have it where you want it and the sides are all flush and everything's perfectly aligned, in your kit, there's gonna be some extra screws They're either gonna be these silver 1 5/8, or if you got skate light, it's gonna be a gray screw that has a weather coating and a little stronger head. But you're gonna use these right here. I like to go kind of like snug inside of the 2x4s. So there, and then I'll usually do one maybe here. And then same thing on the other side. One here, and then one here. And so that's gonna attach these two pieces of ply nice and tight. And if you did get an 8-foot, each kit should have 4 extras of these. So you can do more if you want. You could do one more at the bottom here to sandwich that together. You could throw another one here, another one here. So you'll have up to 8 of these extra. And the purpose of those extra screws is just to tie these together so that you have as flush of a seam as possible, and to make sure that your coping is super flush and that you're never gonna snag and catch your trucks on that. So that's how you attach 2 of these to make an 8-footer. If you got a 4-footer, you don't need to worry about this part, or just keep it in the back of your mind. If you wanna maybe buy another one of these down the line, you can always attach it and make yourself an 8-footer. Or for that matter, if you wanna buy 4 of them and make a 16-footer, you can totally do that too. So this obstacle is really good for learning your first grinds. If you're kind of working up your courage on flat bars but not quite ready for a flat bar, these are great because you can skate it just like a flat bar, but you have the comfort and the security of this plywood on the side of you. You can also kind of skate it like a quarter pipe, bonk over the top of it, do a blunt stall, try to revert, do an axle stall, try to go to the other side. So it's great for that. It's 6 inches tall, which is also the same height as our slat pad obstacle. So that was kind of on purpose in case you get both and you want to put them together and do some combo grinds, you can. And again, yeah, this is the 4-foot slapstick, showing you how to put it together. We have a bunch of other videos. We have 2 others, I believe, on YouTube where we kind of do some R&D sessions of figuring out how this obstacle came to be and figuring out what the specs we liked on it were. So check those out. We'll probably have some more content come out down the line of this obstacle. But yeah, let us know what else you want to see. Thank you for watching. Thank you for buying a ramp from us and the ongoing support. Have fun.